All right, for those of you joining me today that weren't here yesterday, what we are working on is a vehicle fleet tracker system. And this is a React application with a Redux-like implementation for state management, implemented with hooks and context that is just amazing. It's been awesome to work with so far. So I'm going to show you that. We put it together yesterday, works beautifully. We're going to look into what that is and how that works for anybody that wasn't with us yesterday, especially since the recording didn't work from last night. So yeah, I think I have all the settings right today for this. So awesome. Let's go ahead and get started. This is the app. A couple things that we want to work on is we're getting our vehicle data pulled in right now. But as you can see, when we refresh the page here, the center point for the map is here at Palo Alto. So we want to change that up so that when we get this data and the Google Maps component refreshes, it will center out. It'll probably look something like this. If this St. George car wasn't part of the data, then it would probably center in to something like this. But yeah, we'll just get it so that the map is centered around all the vehicles that we have in the data. All right, so let's go ahead and see what is running in the code here, what we've got. So just a quick look at the setup. Oh, by the way, the vehicle data and the user that we logged in with that's the only data we have live here. Everything else, these graphs and numbers are hard-coded. This is a template, a React template that we purchased online from Core UI. So I haven't even changed the sidebar yet. So all of these still take us to the different components that we can use within this template. So the dashboard is what we're working on today. We want to fix the map and we want to hopefully get some of this data updated here. And we'll work with the API to see what data we have available for some of these charts. Yeah, we'll just go there. Okay, so the system that we're using for state management here is borrowed from an article that I found, and I'm trying to find that. Here we go. So here's the article right here. State management with React hooks and context API in 10 lines of code. And someone yesterday commented, 10 lines of code, it's a trap, which was awesome. So this actually works really, really well. And let me walk you through it, and then I'll show you how it's working, how we've implemented it into this project. So this assumes a little bit of understanding with hooks and context API. If you haven't looked into either of those things, then I think this is still valuable to watch and learn a little bit, but you'll understand it better if you have a little bit of understanding of those two things. And we'll go through it a little bit, just not the learning those two things is not the point of this stream here. So okay, context API, you can create a context object. It's basically like a global object that stores data, and anything inside this provider component, any nested component inside this component here can call the data that's passed into this value prop anywhere inside it. And it doesn't have to be a direct child component. It can be 4, 5, 6, 10 levels down. So that's one thing that's really cool with context, is it's a way to avoid prop drilling, where if you want to pass data 4 levels down, component to component to component. With context, you don't have to do that. The only catch is where you want to consume this data right here. This has to be nested inside this provider component, somewhere inside this component tree, inside here. React hooks, we're going to talk about use state and use reducer. So what's really awesome about this is we're going to use the Redux-like principles. So we're going to have pure functions that are controlling and managing our state object, and that makes our state object and the changes that occur on our state object predictable. So we know when this button is clicked, this is exactly what the state will end up looking like. When this data comes in, this is exactly what the state object will look like. If this API call causes an error, this is what our state object ends up looking like. So it makes it very predictable in that way. Now the use reducer is kind of the part of the magic sauce in this system. So when you call use reducer, you pass in a reducer. So here's a normal reducer, just like you learn in Redux Week. And you pass that into use reducer. You pass the reducer in, and then you pass your initial state object. And then it returns an array with a state object as the first element and the dispatch function as the second element. So we pull those out, we destructure these out of the array onto their own const variables, and then we can just call state.count inside this function. So that's part of the magic here, but the other part is we're going to build a custom hook that will distribute, that anywhere we use this custom hook, it will basically connect that component similarly to how the connect function works, but in a more simple manner. So this is the state management file right here. There's some pretty complex stuff going on, so we'll look at this just one step at a time. So basically we're creating a context object. We're calling it state context because this is holding our state for our app. Then we have this state provider component, and this is a functional component. And inside this functional component, we're rendering this JSX right here. So what is this JSX? Well, we saw this earlier with the context API, right? So the state context.provider, anything that's nested inside this can get access to this right here. So we'll talk about this value in a second. But what we ended up doing is we took this state provider, which is rendering this context provider, and we wrapped this around our app component, just like we would wrap the provider component provided by Redux, right? So when you implement Redux, you wrap a provider component around your app, and that gives your app access to what is on the store object. So this wraps our app, which means that everything inside our app can become a consumer of this state context here, and can call anything that is in this value object right here. So let's look at what this value object is. So we just looked at use reducer, and remember, use reducer returns an array of two things. It returns state, our state object, and returns dispatch. So in our value prop, which can be consumed anywhere inside our app, we now have access to our state object, our entire state object, and the dispatch function. So anywhere inside our app, we can grab pieces of the state, or we can dispatch actions. We can use the dispatch function to dispatch actions. So then the last part. This is what we use. This is a custom hook. We know that it's a custom hook because it uses the use name here when we name it, and we can call this custom hook, and this returns the use context hook, and we pass in our state context. So this is also a little bit complex here. One thing that I always try to do within JavaScript, not just React, but any JavaScript app that I'm working on, when I see code like this or like this, I'm always thinking, what does this return? What does this function return? This is a function call. What is this line of code going to evaluate down to? So that I know what this, when I call use state value, I know what use state value is going to evaluate down to, because I know what this evaluates down to. So let's look at what use context gives us. Okay, so use context, I don't know if that is in here very much. Let's just look it up on the React docs. Okay, use context. When we call use context, it gives us the value. It gives us whatever was passed in as the value of the provider. So if we want to know let's scroll back down here. If we want to know what this is going to return, all we have to do is look at what this is right here. So this is just function call after function call. So when we call use state value, what does that return? It returns the function call of this, which returns a function call right here. And then this function call, what this returns right here is what we end up receiving inside our components. So again, the flow of the functions happens, and we end up receiving this array inside our components. So let's go look at how when we call use state value somewhere, what we end up doing with this array. So that's going to look like, okay, so this is the app where we're wrapping our state provider. Now, this is a component where we are calling use state value. So this is our custom hook. And remember, it returns an array with a state object and a dispatch function. So anywhere inside our app, we can import use state value, call it, we get this array back, so we're going to destructure this array. The first item is our state object, so we're going to destructure our state object, and with whatever pieces we want to pull off of our state object and make available inside our component. And then we're going to also pull out the dispatch function. So what we end up with is something like this, where we want theme off our state, and we have theme available now inside our component. And then we can, when this button is clicked, it can dispatch actions in the same way that we would dispatch actions with Redux. That's what use reducer uses, that same dispatch flow. But we took it even a step further, which is awesome. And we've split our reducers into multiple reducers, and we built kind of our own custom combine reducers function. And so we end up being able to up here, even with separate reducers, since we have that combined reducers function, we can still access any piece of our state that we need. So let's go look at how this is working specifically in this Karsync app. We've got lots of console logging going on because we were debugging for a little bit yesterday. Okay, let's see. If I go to application, and I don't have a logout button yet, so I'm just going to remove my keys and go back to the login page. So the login page is a great place to look at our implementation of this. So let's take a look at how that works. So our login page is now, again, I haven't cleaned up a lot of the code from the template here. We're just going for it. So let's see. Here's our login page. We've got a custom hook called useFormInput that is controlling our two inputs. So these two inputs are controlled here. And we have username.value and username.setValue, and same thing for the password. That is controlling our inputs. Then here is our useStateValue. So we called this custom hook that we just looked at, and that returns our entire state object. And we get this isLoggingIn Boolean value from our state object, and we also get the dispatch. So when we click our login button, it's going to run this async function here. And before we fetch our data, before we try to log in, this login function is just imported from way up here in our API. Where is our API folder? So here's our login. This is where we do axios.post. And Dan, if you're watching, sorry, I'm using Axios. Let's see. So let's go back to login. Okay, so we call that function. It makes our axios.post call. We pass in our credentials. It passes that onto the API. We .then off of it, and we say, here's our data. So we dispatch the login success action and our data. Now, before any of this ever happens, we dispatch the login start action. I don't know, I've liked the abstraction of action creators with Redux. So I'm trying this out where I'm dispatching actions directly in my components. And I kind of like it. I think that's on purpose. I think because useReducer returns the dispatch function, I think this is the pattern that we're going to start to see. But I've been so used to using Redux and just working very hard to separate my Redux store, that store object, from any of my components, and just only working with the store object, like the dispatch function, the get state function, only using the connect function for that. So yeah, we're just trying out this pattern. This is, again, directly in our component. Let's see. Good question. Why does Dan not like Axios? No, I don't think Dan has a problem with Axios. I think it's just kind of a banter between him and I. He's got an article called "Why You May Not Need Axios." That's a fantastic article. Dan Levy, I definitely suggest looking that up. It explains how the fetch API has come far enough along now that maybe we don't need the Axios library in our projects. We have the fetch API that is now far enough along that we don't need to reach for yet another library in our software. Okay, so what happens when we dispatch login start? Well, let's go check out our store. I'm going to close pages, plugins. I don't know why all these are open. Again, this is just a lot of code from the package that we purchased. Sorry, there's probably a way to like just close everything. I was laughing with everyone yesterday. I use Code Sandbox so much now that I don't even know how to use VS Code very well anymore. All right, so here's our reducers. So we've got our user reducer, which is taking this login start. Maybe I should call this an auth reducer. Well, not really, because it stores our user data, so I guess it's okay. All right, so login start. Remember, this is before we make our API call. We're dispatching login start. User reducer. I should really have this cleaned up, sorry. Pause for 2 seconds. Close 30 of these windows. Okay, most of those I do need, so I'll go back and user reducer. All right, so login start. Here's our initial state. No error status. Is logging in is false. We have a token and a user that we're checking to see if we have those items in local storage. So we're going to hydrate our state with those items from local storage if they're there. Otherwise, we're just going to set those to null. So when we click login, when we click login before we make our fetch, we're going to toggle is logging in to true, which is going to add a loader. Where's our login? Here we go. So here's our login button. If logging in is true, we're going to add a loader icon, animated icon on our button instead of the text logging in. And you only see it for a quick second because it happens so quickly. And then our success case is called, and we stop is logging in, and we add our token and our user to our state, as well as setting them onto local storage. So let's go ahead and run our login. Now again, it's this state management system that makes this part possible, dispatch and getting our is logging in. So instead of connecting this component and using a map state to props and map dispatch to props or passing in action creators, all we're doing is calling this custom hook, which is returning our entire state object and the dispatch function. And we can call this anywhere inside our application. Anywhere we need state from our global state object, we call useStateValue, and we have our entire state object available and the dispatch function. Oh, I'm like totally nerding out on this because it's such a great system. The easiest state management system I've used to date. All right. So we log in and, oh, cannot read property data of undefined. That's okay. I think we did get our data. Nope, we didn't even get our data. So we've probably got a race condition somewhere. Cool. Simple refresh worked, but is obviously a horrible experience for our users. Let's log out and see if that happens again. That'll be a good place to start for today. All right, add this in here. Okay, so this is in our dashboard. We're trying to dispatch. Now, why is res? So we're trying to dispatch our fetch vehicle success inside our .then, so we should have our data. Console log, we're console logging res, so dashboard 542 is undefined. Oh, because error fetching vehicles for user. Aha! Notice that we are not handling errors yet. So in my reducer, we can close down containers. In my vehicles reducer and our user reducer, we don't have our failure handling yet. So we'll get to that, probably not tonight, but we should soon. Where is that data call? Here we go. Okay, so this is a get. Aha, so our user is not coming through. So let's go see where our user is supposed to be coming through. So this is why we're getting that 400 error. It's saying we're not authorized because we haven't passed in the user ID. And they're right, we didn't pass in the user ID. So let's go clean this up. I think what's happening is we might be calling that. Are we calling it from state or are we calling it from? Well, let's see. So we're getting user from state and get vehicles by ID, user.id is going through as undefined. So that means get user by ID is not receiving our user. So let's figure out what's happening. So console log user, I'm sure, is undefined when we look at the console. So 538, no, it is here. User. So let's look at, this is the problem. Right now, user is a nested object. So we need to be user.user and then pass in. Okay, so here's one issue with our current system. This is a nested, this is an object that we're looking at right here. But when we refresh the page and it makes that call successfully, it's because we're hydrating our state in our reducer with what's on local storage. So this on local storage doesn't match what we're setting right here. So I bet if we look at our state right now, token would be undefined because we need to pass in user.token. So are we logging our action? We're not. So basically what we need to do is user.user. Well, let's go look at what was returned by our login call first. And then we'll know what we need to, how we need to fix this. Okay, so our login happens right here. And are we console logging that? Auth 9, yes. So we've got .token and .user. Oh yeah, it's not from setting this wrong. It's from, okay, let's see. There's a couple possible places that this could be happening, and I think let's console log. All right, so we're going to look at this. So inside our dashboard, we are console logging the user object that is on our state right now, right? We're console logging that here on 538. So we see that this whole object here, it's our entire user state. So if we console log user.user.id, then we would make this call successfully. If we passed user.user.id into here, it would be successful. However, when we hydrate our state on a refresh, we're hydrating it with just the user object, not this entire object here. So when we log in and we first, now it should still, let's see what happens. I'm going to refresh and we're going to look at this 538 console log. 538. Now this is just our user. See, this is a little bit weird to me because it shouldn't be a difference between our hydrating and, okay, let's do this one more time. And this time I'm going to see if we can look at the state object in our React tools. All right, so let's go to React, state provider. I think this context has, this value has our state. So user is all of these things, which is good, right? We want user to be. Now when I refresh, what is this going to look like? Let's see if this is different when I refresh. Well, let's look at this. Okay, so that's what we expect. Oh, look at that. So when on a refresh, our user is no longer that nested nested object here. It's the actual user. Very interesting. So let's figure out why that's happening. All right, so in our state here, state provider, use reducer, let's go ahead and we'll return this. And we're going to console log use reducer, pass in the reducer and initial state. Console log, why is that complaining? Oh, because we haven't closed that out. Okay. And this is state provider, line 7, right here. Oh, why don't you just give me the the, dang it, main reducer, oops. Okay, so this gives us the main reducer. So let's go to our main reducer page, which is combining you know what I think we need to do is instead of, where's our main reducer here? In index. Let's try this. Instead of hydrating our state inside our inside here, let's just set this to null and this one to null. And then we will do this inside dashboard. We'd have to do this everywhere in every component that we could possibly refresh on. Okay, something wonky is going there. So comment came in user reducer instead of use reducer. So there's two different things going on here. There's user reducer, which is our reducer for our user. And then and that's what this is, user reducer. And then in our state provider, we're saying use reducer. Oh, thank you. I see what you're saying. Yes. All right, so there's that. So right now it's giving me all of this. And now we're getting a completely different error. Oh, we've gone down the rabbit hole of debugging. We can knock that auto import out of here. Dashboard, what have you done to me? Thanks for the help, by the way. Appreciate that. Okay, I want to, oh, you know what? I'm really bad at saving all my files, so that might cause some issues as well. Okay, there we go. All right, so right now we've got the nested. Okay, that's right. So that's what we expect out of state provider. So we're good there. So now let's go into this part here. And let's go ahead and console log our initial state. And then our main reducer. Are we even using, oh, we're exporting our initial state. Yeah, so that's not what I want to console log. We are console logging every action that comes in. Let's see, so let's console log user and vehicles. All right, so reducers, line 11. Don't forget to auto save. All right. So user comes in as the actual user. That's the problem. So the actual user is coming in, and that's what's setting our state for user rather than the entire object from here. So let's look at where this comes from. So main reducer is called in believe our app component, main reducer. Okay, so our main reducer is called as our all right. So this is called as our reducer, and we're passing the entire initial state object to, okay, so let's follow the flow here. So our main reducer gets passed to our state provider component as well as our initial state object. Our initial state object takes all of the initial state objects from the different reducer files and spreads them into a single object. But then our main reducer takes those that single object and is pulling out the user item on here. So what we want to do is just pass in state and then we're going to say state.user maybe. Oh, that's the same thing. User reducer. Well, let's just console log. Let's just console log state and see what that gives us. So main reducer line 11. So error, error, vehicle error, vehicles error, user item. Ah, interesting. So how do we take half of this object and pass it into the correct reducer? Well, maybe we don't want to spread in our initial state here. So what's happening is we're getting this one huge combined object. We spread in all of our state properties into one single object, and that's why everything is on the same level here. But we don't want everything on the same level because now we want to take half of these properties and pass it into the correct reducer. So instead, let's do this, and we don't have to call these user state. We'll just say user and vehicles. So let's just make an object of objects. Now let's look at our state, and it should be 2 objects, so we know which object goes into which reducer. So, oh, I guess I have to save. And we'll look for that on line 11. That's okay that this is broken right now because line 11, did it not log? Ah, it broke before we could log it. Oh, here it is. Oh, it went down to line 8. Okay, so now we've got an object of objects. So now we've got nested objects. So we're going to pull out the user object and the vehicles object. And user, vehicles, we'll console log those. We'll pass user, the entire object, not just user.user, into here, and vehicles into there. Then line 8. So there's all of our user properties. Here's all of our vehicle properties. Perfect. So now let's go look at the state object right here. So this should now be a nested object. Yes. Yes, this is what we wanted. Nice. Okay. All right, perfect. But that means that in our dashboard, we were we're calling user, which is this entire object now. So we need to pass in user.user.id instead of just user.id. So user.user.id. Now this should work. The shape of our state was different when we logged in and when we refreshed. So now they should be in sync. They should be the same all around. And voila. There we go. If the login works as well, we'll get a it's working call in here. Because, I mean, we have to. Yes, it's working. It's working. Beautiful. Okay, awesome. Bug 1 down, 500 to go. Cool. So that was fun. Of course, you never know when bugs are going to arise. You never plan for that. But it was a great look into our system, and we had written our system incorrectly at first. So it was really good to look at that and see and catch that bug early instead of later on when we have a lot more state. Okay, so let's go ahead and work on this map part. So we'll go to Google Maps and watch how slick this is. We've got our vehicle data. If we look at React and we look at our consumer or our provider, we have on our vehicles, we've got an array of 10 vehicles. And each vehicle has a whole bunch of data, including inside real-time info, latitude, and longitude. So that's where these markers are coming from. They're coming from our latitude and longitude points. And then we should be able to click on this and see the titles of each vehicle. Rob's Colorado. Awesome. So let's go look at Google Map, Google Maps.js, and let's see how this is getting the data. So this is the component being exported here. So this component is rendering Google Maps component. So we find Google Maps component. This is using an HOC. It's rendering Google Map and marker list as a child. So let's go to marker list because that sounds about right for working with our data, right? So marker list, we come up here to marker list and oh, hey, there's our custom hook. So remember our custom hook, anywhere in our app we can call this and we get an array with our entire state object. And then if we need, we can also access our dispatch function. Right now, we don't need our dispatch function inside marker list. All we want is the vehicle's data from our state object. So wonderful, so good, so easy to bring data in. So then we pass our data into, or we are formatting our locations. The hard-coded data, the example data that came with the template looked like this. So what we did is inside our format locations function, we just mapped over our vehicles, returned that array, and basically created an array of objects from our vehicles data that looks like this. And then that's what we pass into here. So now let's see if there is, where are we setting bounds here? No results, center, default center. Okay, we don't want a default center. So let's go look at the, API, the docs for Google Maps. And what we want to do is we want to, ooh, this is all new. This is a refreshed, good looking page. Map, JavaScript. Okay, this looks a little more familiar. All right, so we want to find something with, let's see. Well, let's spell things correctly. All right, let's do this. Let's do Google Maps center around markers. Haha. Auto center map with multiple markers in Google Maps here. Okay, so there's an easier way by extending an empty this is what I'm looking for. Latitude, longitude bounds, rather than creating one explicitly from 2 points. So should look something similar like this added to your code. All right, so we're gonna make a bounds object, and we're gonna say new google.maps.latitude, longitude bounds, and then that is, then we're going to extend the bounds to include each marker's position. So for each location, we're going to create a marker. Then we're going to say extend the bounds of our map to include that new marker. So let's go see where we're creating a new Google Maps. And we need to pass in bounds. Now fit the map to the newly inclusive bounds. So then we need to say map.fitBounds and pass in this bounds object here. So we need to find where we're creating our map inside here. Oh yay, now we get a search for map. Oh, only 19, that's not too bad. So let's find our map with Google Map. That might be, oh, React Google Maps. We may have to go look at React Google Maps. But let's just see vehicles.map, format locations. Okay, so let's go look at React Google Maps. If you haven't played with Google Maps before, so much fun. It's a little bit tough. It's not super intuitive for an API as APIs go, but really fun once you get it working and you're like, my data's on the map. So let's go check this out. React Google Maps, that's the correct one. React Google Maps, good. And let's see if they talk about, read the documentation. Let's see if we can find anything about bounds. Get bounds, get center, returns the circle of center. So what were we calling here? Default center we were passing into there. Oops. So default center we want to create from our map. Get bounds gets the longitude bounds of this circle. On bounds change, fit bounds, here we go. Pan to bounds. All right, so we're gonna have to use, it looks like they still just use the Google Maps fit bounds. So let's see if they give an example. Google Map. I don't like this documentation that much. Kind of hard to see what I can use and where to use it. So let's search for fit bounds and see if they have an example. Okay, so refs.map.fitbounds. So we're setting the map as a ref. So with Google Map, okay, I'm just going to find where our ref is because we want to, this is what we want to run. We want to do this. So const refs, bounds null, refs.map. Okay, so on map mounted, refs.map equals ref. Let's go see if there's something like that in our code. Find, there's no refs. Is there nothing mounted? Class rec Google Maps. Where are these coming from? So where was this one again? Google Maps component with Google Map. What if we take this away? Just curious. Are we gonna be like, oh, there's nothing. Hello. That's funny. So that doesn't work. Google Map is coming from there. Okay, so Google Maps coming from there. Is that how their documentation shows it as well? Yes. So where is Google Map being used? Right here, ref equals props dot on map mounted. So let's try something similar. So map with a search box. And we want to say component will mount. Oh yeah, I think you have to do that with Google Maps. You have to let, I don't know. Shouldn't be using that. Okay, so Google Map is here. We want to take in we want to set a ref of our map. And that is going to be from right here. Props ref props dot on map mounted. On map mounted refs dot map equals ref. Okay, so this is going to go inside our Google Map component, right? This is very confusing. Man, it'd be nice to have better documentation, huh? Is that the only way we can do fit bounds? refs.map.fit bounds. Okay, so what I want to know is how to, let's get rid of that guy. Close. Leave. What I want to know is how to set this ref. And I'll be honest, I haven't done a lot with refs. I haven't needed to do a lot with refs. I've used refs a few times, but Oh, we've got compose going on. Okay, life cycle. Ugh. This is just not making me happy how this library is set up. Well, good. So let's see if we can get reference to our map and then call map.fitBounds. So where is our first reference of map? Refs.map. So they must be doing this under the hood inside this with Google Map higher order component. And so what is this function call here? That ends our compose. And is composing those, all of those together. Blah. This does not make it easy. Are we doing compose anywhere here? You know what? Let's try this. New tactic. We're going to go to Core UI. We're going to go to their documentation and see if they have any thoughts for the maps. Let's see, build tools, JavaScript. So you can go here and get the free version. Unfortunately, the free version doesn't include maps. There's quite a few things that come with the pro version. I think the pro version is like $70 right now. And I may need to log in. UI kit. No. Just want to see how to use the map. Okay, React, Google Maps. Let's see if anyone on Stack Overflow has an idea. React, Google Maps. Fit bounds. Aha! React, Google Maps, issue. This is closed, so there should be an answer. Ryan Hamblin. Aw, Ryan. Our very own Ryan Hamblin is on here chatting it up with React Google Maps folks. Okay, I get bounds from server API, latitude, longitude. Google API has fit bounds method. Unfortunately, I don't understand how to do this via this component. Neither do I. Thanks for the help, Ryan. I too am having trouble with this. I'm assuming that the open source, let's see. So no longer being maintained. Ryan is all over this. Let's see. I did it in the render method. Further up in the script, bounds is initialized, then extended to contain the marker center, and finally extended to include polygon's path. This piece borrows heavily from the front page README sample, but you can see where I set up map object bounds once the ref is instantiated right after the login. Okay. So let's see. Google Map Loader, Google Map Element, Google Map Ref, Map Fit to Bounds, Bounds. Okay, so we might just have to do something like that and set a ref. See, this is the syntax that I recognize a lot more. Okay, so cool. So bounds is going to be what we saw in the actual Google Maps documentation. So let's go to ours, and where we are calling Google Map right here, we want to set up a ref, but we don't have bounds. So we need to set up bounds, which means we need our vehicles. Well, we can get our vehicles like this. We have our vehicles. Heck yeah. That is the best thing in the world. Every time I use this, every time I'm going to say this is the best thing in the world, because it literally is the best thing. And I'm totally texting Ryan and telling him that I found his conversation on here. Ooh, here's some more stuff. Okay, I did it this way. Hopefully it helps. Google Map ref equals map and component did update, const bounds. Ooh, a little bit simpler. Although I put it all in the render method. Okay, yeah, that happens in the render bounds. All right, so let's grab this. We need this piece over here. So we need bounds. So there's our bounds. Then we need coordinates, and we're going to map over our vehicle's locations and grab the latitude and longitude and set up a new instance of the Google Maps latitude, longitude, and then pass that into there. I think this is gonna work. Okay, coordinates, where are coordinates being passed in? We don't need to capture this. All right, so instead we're gonna say vehicles.map, and we're taking in one vehicle at a time, and we're saying latitude and longitude from, let's go look at how we did it here, vehicles.map, so vehicle.realtimeinfo.latitude and .longitude. So we're gonna say const, actually let's just take all of this away, and we'll do that and that, but this will be called longitude. Oh, okay, here we go. No! We don't have our vehicles. We haven't finished that call. So when we finish that call, let's console log vehicles. So we don't have our vehicles data yet, but we should, when this changes, this component should, well, we'll see what happens. I'm just gonna console log that out. And let's see when we get our data, if we even get our data. 1:30, so we're still not getting our data by the time we error out. Okay, so do we ever get our data inside here? Line 117. 117. Yes, we do. So eventually we do get our data, which means we can say Oh. Instead of returning Google Map, let's try this. Let's say if no vehicles, return null. Nope, it doesn't like that. Oh, we have to do it above where we're actually calling vehicles. Nope, still doesn't like that. Oh, we want vehicles dot vehicles. Okay. So one can't perform React on an unmounted component. Oh, let's see. Vehicles.vehicles is null. So we haven't gotten our data back yet for our vehicles call, which is interesting. You know what we need to do? We need to say we shouldn't be doing this checking here. What we should be doing is where we render React Google Maps, we need to make sure not to render this component until our data has loaded. So let's go to where we're rendering React Google Maps in our dashboard. And find React, I think it's renamed as Google Map. Yes. So here we're going to say if vehicles, because we've pulled in our vehicles on state already, vehicles dot vehicles, that's our API, not our reducer. We're going to say vehicles, if there's no vehicles, or if we're fetching vehicles, then we're not going to render Google Map here. Vehicles dot vehicles dot length and vehicles dot, what do we call that? Is fetching vehicles. Now, what's going to be really nice in a couple months here is we won't have to do this kind of checking. We'll be able to use React Suspense to delay rendering Google Map until everything inside Google Map has resolved and fetched its data. So this won't be a thing that we're going to see very much longer. All of this is going to be taken care of with React Suspense. Nice. Okay, so failed to compile. Where are we talking about here? 648. Is this the only instance of Google Map? Okay. So what are we having a problem with here? Adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. What? So I think that is card body. That doesn't make sense. So if we take back everything we did, we were just right here. And then what if we just comment this out? Do we get the same error? No. Let's abstract this out into render Google Maps function call. And we'll go way up here. Again, this is a, normally I wouldn't have so much in one component. I will be breaking this out into separate components. Again, this just came with the template. So, all right. If fetching vehicles, return loading. Oops, we're going to say const render Google Maps. Return Google Map if vehicles.length is falsy. So if the length is 0, or if vehicles is fetching vehicles, return null. Let's try that. Oh, well, of course we got to write this correctly. Come on. Still, cannot read property. Fine, we'll do one more check. If vehicles even exists, cannot read. Oh, it's because I spelled this wrong. Oh, wow. Of null. Oh, I see. So, okay, if there's no vehicles.vehicles, or so if any of these return falsy, then we're going to return null. There we go. What? What the heck? Why is Laurel's car in the ocean? Okay, something happened with the data there. But check this out. It worked. Our fit map to bounds worked. So we'll refresh. We get our map wrapping around our data. And then we can zoom and be like, okay, where is the rest of our vehicles? I think she got attacked by pirates. Oh man. Woo! All right, let's check our login and make sure this works on login as well. So we're going to log out by clearing our token. Oh, ask Laurel if it worked. Oh man. All right. rmyers@karsync.com, and the password. Boom. Yes. There we go. Okay. Oh man, a lot of comments. Let me just see if there's anything. We can take a little break and see what's going on in the comments here. I'm reading code jokes on a stream chat to relax from watching someone code from a long day of coding. Yeah. I'm glad this is a little bit relaxing. Coke is greater than Pepsi. Change my mind. I don't like Coke or Pepsi. Oof. Take that. 10 lines of magic. We covered that at the beginning, so come back. If you didn't catch that at the beginning, the 10 lines of code state management system with hooks and context, amazing. So good. The new Boston asks, not a fan of TypeScript? Let's see. So I actually do like TypeScript a lot. It wasn't built into this this template when I purchased it. Also, students at Lambda School don't learn TypeScript, and they're kind of my target audience right now. So yeah, I'm not going to get into that. But I actually just submitted a talk for TSConf in Seattle and waiting to hear back, talking about how we have to, or a couple patterns that we need to adapt with TypeScript with React hooks. So there's some issues that come up and some ways to to work around those issues. So yeah, no, I do like TypeScript. I actually the first time I used TypeScript was with Angular 2. We started a project with Angular and Dart a few years ago when that was still a thing, and then we scrapped that real quick and moved to TypeScript. Why don't we learn TypeScript? Oh man, I wish we could. We just don't have time. Imagine trying to fit all of that in on top of everything else we learn. Okay, cool. So next thing we want to do is take a look at a few of these things happening, or some of this data here. So let's go to our API and see what data we could possibly use. Well, actually, one that we have is this active vehicles. Our vehicles data is, let's see what we have on our vehicles data. I think we have an isActive tag here. Is there, I thought it came with is currently active. Odometer real-time info, status offline. I mean, I imagine most of these are offline right now because it's midnight and they're pretty much all in Mountain Standard Time or the ocean. Wonder if Laurel's car is offline. Oh man. That would be great if it was online. So I'm just going to take a peek real quick, see if we have anything different. I don't know. I'll have to message my backend dev to see what the values could be for the status and how they're determined. It looks like we're not going to get any online vehicles. Now, of course, our users are going to be using this software mostly in the daytime when their vehicles are active. So the idea is if you're like a delivery service, or maybe if you are a pest control service or an installing service, you're installing what is it, solar panels or something, and you want to track your vehicles for your workers, then you want to see which vehicles are active. In other words, which car is on and driving, and then you want to see which cars are not, I imagine. Let me just check to see if he's by chance online. He might be online right now. Ah, green circle. Let's see. In vehicles data, it is a status property. Right now, all vehicles show offline. What are the other values that this property could be? And how is that value determined? Is it when the vehicle is turned on? We'll see if he answers. All right. But let's just do a little bit of exploring here and see what else we have available. I'm going to zoom back just a little bit. And let's see, user groups, alerts. So we're going to use alerts for, this is, if I remember correctly, this is going to be like maybe if a driver drives too fast. I think these are like negative alerts against or for that vehicle. So driving too fast, braking too hard. I don't think we have like a gyroscope type system yet. Maybe in our mobile app that the drivers download, the phone can watch the gyroscope, and if you turn too fast, then we could track that data. But right now we can track like fast accelerations, hard braking, speed, all those kind of things. So that would be a good thing to put up here. Maybe alerts. Oh, hey, check that out, alerts. Maintenance items, I think we can grab. I don't know how well this API is fleshed out though. Hey, Dan's with us. Hi, Dan. Everybody say hi to Dan. Okay, let's see. So, oh, look at this. We got it locked. Maintenance for vehicle. Get all vehicle specific maintenances. Update maintenance. Create maintenance type. Get all maintenance types. Create manufacturer. Okay, so the idea behind this API is that when a vehicle is added to the system, we use some open source APIs for tracking vehicle maintenance. So you pass in the year, make, model, and the VIN number, and then it searches on the vehicle maintenance database, and it gives back all of the the manufacturer's suggested maintenance. So the Swagger is fun. So the idea is that when you add a new vehicle to the system that you want to track, it will say, okay, starting now, you have every 5,000 miles you want to do an oil change. And so up here, we're going to say 3 maintenance items coming up. We'll be able to click on this, go to some maintenance page, and you'll be able to see which vehicles have upcoming maintenance items scheduled. And so let's just play around with this real quick and see all vehicle specific maintenances and see if we have anything coming in yet here. Okay, so cool. So he just got back to me and he said, yes, as of now, it's just online and offline. When the vehicle is turned on, in a few seconds, the status goes to online. So again, middle of the night, all the vehicles are offline. We'll go ahead in just a minute. We'll map through all of our vehicles, find which ones are online, and we'll put that number here. Tonight it's going to show up 0, and probably most nights that we are that we're streaming here. But I think I could contact some people and have them start driving, and we can track that. Okay, so let's go to our, we need to grab our token. So I've got my token, and we're gonna try this out. So let's grab a vehicle, and that is in React. Okay. So one of our vehicles will get the ID number 1, Robbie's Ford Focus. Couple questions are coming in. Explain context a little bit more. So from Drew, how's it going, Drew? Yeah, I'm the React instructor at Lambda School. So we are a 7 to 9 month boot camp program where we teach. We've got a web track, iOS, Android, machine learning, data science, and then all of those tracks, after they finish their tracks and go through a 5-week labs program, all of those students also take 2 units of computer science. So we're a little bit different than most of the kind of web-focused boot camps where our students also receive a really fantastic computer science education. So yeah, check us out, lambdaschool.com. Context is a newish API in React. So just look up React Context API. It's a really fantastic API to work with. All right, so let's go get all the vehicle stuff for vehicle number 1. And a response, there's no data. Vehicle number 2. I don't think this is built out yet. Okay, yeah, we'll try one more. Vehicle 3. Okay, so eventually when that finishes, when that's built out in the API, we'll be able to mark the maintenance items here. Alerts, I don't know what we're gonna do in this area. Let's see if there's anything else, any other APIs we want to do. Vehicles, users, trips, real-time vehicle tracking. Get all active vehicles for logged in user groups. Oh, cool. That's pretty neat. Have you seen I'm sure most of you have seen that on YouTube, that outdoor guy. That's so neat. Maintenance, events, get events by vehicle. Maybe this has something that we could look at. I need to find out from the project manager which of these APIs are finished here. So where's our maintenance? Do I still have my token? Okay, so there's my token, and let's try out this. Yeah, nothing there. Okay, I think the last thing we're gonna do tonight then is go ahead and update this number, and that should be pretty simple. And I don't know what we're going to do with the graph here. I think I'm going to change these graphs. This just came with the template. I might redesign these cards because most of our data that we want to display up here isn't going to be like tracked over time. That's not going to be useful data for our users. So we might redesign this. But yeah, let's go take a look at this. This should be pretty straightforward. In our dashboard here, that's going to be these inside this row. So each column is going to be one of these cards. So active vehicles right here. And 32 right now is hard-coded. So let's come up here, and we've got our vehicles coming in. So let's make a function here, get active vehicles. Actually, let's try this. We'll keep that 32 for a second. Let's go into our reducer, and when vehicle success comes in, we're going to say const active vehicles equals action dot payload dot filter, and we're going to go we're going to look at one vehicle at a time. And for each vehicle that has the status active, we'll return it back to this array. So we'll say vehicle dot real time. We gotta go look at it. Vehicle dot realtime info dot status. And if that equals online, we'll keep it in here. And this is just going to be, yeah, let's just keep all the vehicles. I was thinking about doing dot length, but that can, if you do dot length back here, you can run into trouble if somehow this becomes undefined or not in an array, then this will throw an error. So I don't want to do dot length. Instead, we'll say active vehicles as an object or as a property on our state object here, and we'll go ahead and add active vehicles to our object. Okay, so when we do that and we refresh the page, we should have active vehicles on our array or on our vehicles. And right now it's 0, which we expected. If we switch this real quick and we say equals offline, then we should get all of them into that array. So let's just check that, make sure that that works. Vehicles, active vehicles. Aha! See, this is why we check. Returned an empty array where we should have an array of 10. Okay, so Drew says I use context. I'm having troubles with use reducer and context. Hey, Drew, check this out. I've got the solution for you. It is this. This is what I'm using, and it is amazing. So state management with React hooks and context API in 10 lines of code. After we finish and the video posts here, the first like 20 minutes of the video is me walking through implementation of this state management system in this project, and it is amazing, like the best thing I've seen. So yeah, it's I love where you say I wasn't huge into Redux, but we do use Redux, and we are switching over to use Reducer. This is by far the best implementation I've seen so far. So let me show you just real quick, just because I'm excited about it now. Cool. So what it uses, here's my state. Okay, so this is the state management system right here. This is the file, and we're exporting this custom hook, which uses the use context hook to grab this value here. So when you use context and you pass in some state context object, then it grabs the value that you're passing in for the provider, right? So what is the value here? The value here is use reducer, which passes in all of our reducers and all of our initial state. So we've split up our reducers here. We've got a user reducer, we've got a vehicles reducer. They both have initial state. In this post here, he talks about splitting reducer to more than one, and so we use this code here inside as well. Then we've also added like a logger middleware, custom middleware logger function here. So yeah, this covers a lot of the bases that Redux covers, but obviously without Redux. So then going back to state provider. So state provider now is our provider component, and we wrap this around our entire app. So our entire app has access through consumers or through this use context hook to any of our entire state object. So how are we using this? Well, inside dashboard or inside any component, all you have to do is import use state value and call use state value, and you receive that the array with the state and dispatch that use reducer returns that looks like this. So here's that custom hook that's returning what use reducer returns. So we get our state object, our entire state object, and we get dispatch, and then we're destructuring whatever we need, whatever state properties we need from our state object, and then we can dispatch actions straight from here. So yeah, fantastic system. I've used this in 3 components now, seamless. It's awesome. I'm totally loving this. And I think this is the way to manage things I think this is going to be a pretty resilient pattern when Suspense for data fetching comes out as well this summer, because I think they'll play fairly nicely together. So yeah. Okay. So last part is we're trying to set this value here. So now we have vehicles.activeVehicles, but that was not working. So let's go to our reducer, figure out why active vehicles. Action.payload should be our vehicles.filter, one vehicle at a time, vehicle. Let's just console log action.payload. So line 21, so many console logs. I gotta go clean that up. Line 21. Okay. So yeah, vehicle.realtimeinfo.status. Am I spelling this wrong? I feel like I have a misspelling error here. Vehicle dot real time. Oh, dot state. Haha. There we go. So that should give us 10 vehicles on our array. Or 9. Maybe Laurel's car is online. Cool, let's try. Does this give us 1 if we say online? Maybe someone's driving right now. There must be one that doesn't have the correct value being passed in. Status under the ocean. All right, so we've got vehicles.active vehicles. So we're just going to come into our dashboard and we're going to say, where's my dashboard? Dashboard. So vehicles.active vehicles is now available in here. So we're going to say vehicles.active vehicles.length. Vehicles. Vehicles. Oh, where were we using if vehicles dot is fetching vehicles? Ah, active vehicles. Why can't I spell vehicles? There we go. That should do it. Oh man. Oh, loading for days. Let's just comment that out for a second. Okay, 0 active vehicles. Awesome. I think that is going to be good for tonight. So yeah, I'll keep working on this over the next couple weeks pretty frequently. I think every time I work on it, I'm just going to live stream. So even if nobody jumps on, I'm just going to have it up. Feel free to stop in and relax from a hard day of learning and coding. And yeah, thanks for stopping by. Have a great evening, everyone.